Hey you guys, my name's Jeff. Welcome to the channel. Do you want to know the secret sauce that I am using to beat the stock market? Today's video is going to feature the Vanguard Small-Cap ETF. The ticker symbol is VB. As a reminder, this is not financial advice, only speculating on how this investment in VB could potentially benefit my investment. If you enjoy this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. How do I plan to beat the market? If you want different results in life, you have to think differently and you have to act differently. So this year, what I've decided to do is build a portfolio that is very different from the S&P 500, which is how a lot of people benchmark their returns to the overall stock market. So I'm focusing on investing in ETFs that are either small caps or value stocks, or in some cases, both small cap and value. Now, I made a recent video about the Avantis US Small Cap Value ETF, and you can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But what interested me about that ETF is that it invests only in very small companies and in value companies. Now, VB, which is the subject of today's video, is different from AVUV. With the Avantis ETF, AVUV, it invested only in really small companies. So these are companies on average between $2 billion and $4 billion in market cap. Now, VB, which is the subject of today's video, pretends to be a small cap ETF, but it's not really. And what I'm saying is you got to look past the headlines of this name, small cap, because when you look underneath the hood at what it actually invests in, you'll see that it invests about 60% of its portfolio in small caps and 40% in companies that are larger than small cap, larger than 4 billion, and they're called mid-cap stocks. So even though Vanguard calls VB the Vanguard Small Cap ETF, it's not all small caps. In reality, only 60% of the portfolio is in those small companies, which are up to about $4 billion in market cap. But 40% of the stocks in the portfolio are actually mid-cap stocks. And I just think it's real important to look beyond the headlines, to look beyond the name, because the name is often misleading. And just to show you what I mean, what I like about AVUV is that it helps me target only the small cap part of the stock market. I think 95% of that ETF is all small caps. But VB is not a bad ETF. It's actually, I think, an excellent one, and I'm going to show you why I like VB. But I think you just have to keep in mind that the name small cap ETF is not entirely accurate. I think it's much more like a blend between small and mid caps. The median market cap for VB is 5.6 billion. So you can see, compared to AVUV. The other interesting thing about VB is it doesn't just invest in value stocks like AVUV. Nope, VB invests in value stocks and also growth stocks and everything in between. It just exposes you and your investment portfolio to stocks all across the small and mid-cap spectrum. Because VB is so different from AVUV, I find it a really useful part of this 5 ETF portfolio that I'm putting together this year. And that's because it invests in more than 1,500 different stocks, so it's very diversified, and it gives me exposure not only to value, but to growth stocks. And since I don't know exactly which ones are going to perform the best this year and in several years to come, I like the opportunity to invest in all of these stocks in one ETF. So let's take a closer look at the Vanguard Small Cap ETF, VB. VB holds 1,501 different stocks. And these are value stocks and growth stocks, okay? So it's the whole gamut of the stock market. And the expense ratio is a very low cost 0.05%. And that means that you're spending 5 cents out of every $100 for the management of this particular ETF. And that means out of $1,000, you're just spending 50 cents. And once you get up to like a $10,000 investment, you're only paying $5 to have Vanguard manage this ETF. So the top 10 holdings of VB only comprise 3.47% of this ETF. And what that means is that it's so well diversified that even the largest holdings, if they don't do well or their performance is horrible, it's going to have such a small impact on the overall performance of this ETF. So one way to think of it is your risk for any one of these stocks doing poorly is very small, and what you really gain from this ETF is exposure to the whole small cap universe and also some mid-cap stocks. So let's take a closer look just at the top 10 holdings so you can get an idea of what small cap stocks look like, those that make it into this ETF. So the number one holding is called Steel Dynamics, as you can see here. The number two holding is IDEX. The number three is Targa Resources. Now something you're going to notice here is you probably have not heard of many or any of these particular stocks. Number four is Atmos Energy. Number five is First Solar. I've actually heard of this company. I've thought of investing in it, but there are so many solar companies and it seems so risky to me to invest in one of them, because if you take the money that you've earned and put, $2,000 or $5,000 into First Solar and this stock tanks, you're really up a creek. But the nice thing about this ETF is you get exposure to this stock, but because you're investing in 1,500 different stocks, this one's not going to hurt you if the value of the stock goes down. Number six, another great example. This is Texas Pacific Land. And here's a company that did insanely well last year. And I was really thinking how much I'd like to invest in Texas Pacific Land because they have a real interesting business model where they get royalties on all of this land in Texas that other companies pay them just to use the land to get oil from it. Anyways, Texas Pacific Land is a stock that interested me, but it's not one I'd want to actually put $5,000 in, because with my luck, as soon as I invested in TPL, the stock would tank. Anyways, it makes it into this portfolio. Number seven is Bunge. Number eight is Fair Isaac. Number nine is APA Corporation. And number 10 is Ovintiv. At least that's what it looks like to me. So as you can see, these are companies that most people have never heard of before, and you really don't need to know anything about these stocks. As I said, you're just getting exposure to this sector of small companies. And as I said, if you want different results, you have to do something different. And what I'm doing this year with this portfolio is putting a lot of my eggs in the small cap basket through AVUV, which is the Avantis US Small Cap Value ETF, and VB, the Vanguard Small Cap ETF. I'm putting 40%, because each of those is 20% of this portfolio. So 40% is going into these small cap ETFs. If you compare that to the S&P 500, 2% of the S&P 500 is small caps. I'm just going to say that again. Out of that entire ETF, out of that entire index, 2% of those stocks are small caps. I'm investing 40% in small caps. So this is a very different portfolio. I have my reasons for believing that small cap stocks are going to do very well, not only this year, but in the next several years. And I could very well be wrong. This could be a mistake, and I will learn from it. But I share this with you because I want you guys to understand how this portfolio is built and why I'm doing it. So just to recap, VB is a diversified ETF that's very low cost, and it gives me exposure to a lot of small cap stocks and also mid cap stocks at extremely low cost. And it invests in both value and in growth stocks. My challenge this year is to invest an equal amount into 5 different ETFs. I'm going to invest a minimum of $300 into 5 different ETFs. And the reason I say 300 minimum is, some ETFs might be $75 per share. And so that I can get up to 300, I would buy 4 shares of that $75 ETF, and then I'd have a $300 amount. But some shares might be $312 for a share of an ETF, and in that case, I would just buy one of those. Anyways, my goal is to get to about 300 or more into each of these ETFs. I'm going to report to you guys periodically just to let you know how this portfolio is performing. Please put any opinions or thoughts you have in the comment section below. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be useful and informative. If you like this video on VB, then you might also like some of the info on other ETFs that I'm investing in as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.